and welcome to my channel if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, but if it is not, welcome back. Today I'd like to talk about the books that I've read so far in July, the books I'm currently reading, and then the books I hope to read next month in August. And to go along with this video, I've made myself a cocktail that is quite a noxious looking color. It is bright green, and I found this cocktail recipe in this book here, which is Vintage Spirits and Forgotten Cocktails by Ted High, aka Dr. Cocktail, but it is called the Leatherneck Cocktail, and it is made with 2 ounces of blended whiskey, 3/4 ounce of blue curacao, and then 1/2 ounce of fresh lime juice. I kind of eyeballed the blue curacao and the fresh lime juice, which is why I think mine looks a little bit more potent of a teal than the picture in the book. But it smells really, really good, so we're gonna give this a try. That's stronger than I expected, though I guess it is really just whiskey and blue curacao with some lime juice to cut through. I don't hate it. Blue curacao always reminds me of that coming of age time in someone's life when you start drinking alcohol for the first time. And this is quite potent. It's really tasty. I think it's growing on me. Maybe that's the fact that it's predominantly just whiskey, but yeah, 2 ounces of whiskey, 3/4 ounce of blue curacao, and 1/2 ounce of lime juice. You're supposed to garnish it with a lime wheel, but I got a little bit lazy. Yeah, I don't know how frequently I'll be reaching for this cocktail, but it is a very, very vibrant, pretty blue color. So we're gonna set that aside for right now and dive into the books that I read throughout July. Full disclosure, I am filming this video a few days before the end of the month, because I have recently started a new job that is occupying so much of my time. I worked 50 some hours this past week, and it's gonna edge up to 60 and above within the coming weeks and months. So my reading is going to slow down quite a bit, unfortunately, and that makes me a little bit sad, but it also means I need to take advantage of the time that I have to film to make sure that I can continue filming these videos and uploading. We'll see how I get on. I only just finished my 2nd week now, but back at the beginning of the month, I had so much more time to read. So I've actually read 9 books so far this month, and quite a few of them I really, really enjoyed and were like 4.5 star reads and above. So I'm really excited to talk about them today. A lot of them are romance. However, I do have a fantasy and a horror comic to talk about too. So let's just dive in. The first book that I read in July was on July 1st, and that was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I borrowed this from my library and read it within the space of a day. It really compelled me because the setting is Regency England, and if you know me, I love Regency England, but this is a YA book and it also includes fairies. So we're in an alternate Fae Regency England. It's really quick paced. It was really fast paced. I think it was only 250 pages, and it's YA. So the romance that takes place between our main protagonists is quite surface level, but I found this just to be such an endearing, whimsical read, and I really loved the way that Atwater took a very familiar setting, to me at least, Regency England, and then just injected fae and folklore into that time period. So I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars and just absolutely loved it, and it was the first book by Atwater that I've read, but it's certainly not going to be my last book because I just absolutely adored it. I apologize that I am staring a whole lot at my phone, but 6 out of the 9 books I read so far in July were on Libby, so we're gonna keep my notes handy right here. The next book that I read was also through Libby and an ebook, and it's one that I've already spoken about on this channel. If you watched my summer rom-com reading recommendations video, because that is of course Summer Reading by Jenn McKinlay. I gave Summer Reading 4 stars. Again, it's just a light-hearted, quick, fast-paced romance. I will say that this book contains more serious themes like grief and parental loss, both really recently and a little bit more distant from that initial shock of grief. As well, our main female protagonist has dyslexia, and that's a really big component of the book, but I really enjoyed the way that McKinlay wove that throughout the storyline of the book, and it was really just a part of our character. It wasn't just a personality trait that McKinlay threw in. I really liked how it actually influenced the trajectory of the plot line. I've really been enjoying McKinlay this year. I read her for the very first time after writing an article about all of her books, and I have found that she's just a really light-hearted, cozy, easy romance writer that I enjoy. There's only been one piece of work by her, which was a novella, that I didn't really enjoy, but in terms of her full-length novels, I've enjoyed all of them. So Summer Reading, I gave that one 4 stars, and it was the perfect summer read in my opinion. The next book that I read was Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, and I have been reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy as well as Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas for the very first time this year. And I've had a little bit of a mixed bag experience with reading both of those series because they've been out for a substantial amount of time and because they are so beloved online. I already kind of know what's going to happen in both of those series. Therefore, my reading of Siege and Storm, as well as the books in the Throne of Glass series, have it's just been a little bit so-so. I wouldn't say that I outright dislike either of those series, and I certainly didn't dislike Siege and Storm, but there's nothing that, so far at least, has taken me off guard or by surprise. And I think if I had read these books closer to when they first came out and before they became kind of pop culture pillars in the fantasy community, those moments would have taken me a little bit more off guard and I would have enjoyed the twists a little bit more. But yes, Siege and Storm, I gave it 3.5 stars. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. Versus 6 of Crows, which I read for the first time last year, the year before even now, it's all a blur. But I fell in love with 6 of Crows and I adore the Crows. So I finally came to read Shadow and Bone, and I was just hoping to tap into what I loved about 6 of Crows so much, but so far that just hasn't been the case. I'm definitely going to finish out the trilogy. It's not that I dislike it enough to DNF the series or anything like that, but it's just been a little so-so. 3.5 stars. It wasn't a bad read by any means, but it wasn't one that kept me absolutely riveted and that I wanted to lose sleep for. It's mostly just reading it so that I can say I have finally read it, because so many people just adore this trilogy. However, the next book that I read is one that I absolutely adored. It is one that I have a physical copy of, and it's one that I have already spoken about twice on this channel, and that is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. I have a full reading vlog up on the channel of me making my way through this arc, but the too long didn't watch, I guess, is that I adored The Pairing. It takes place in France, Spain, and Italy. It's a really comforting, immersive European whirlwind tour. Our time frame is over the course of a few weeks with a few flashbacks woven throughout as we follow these two characters who were childhood best friends, became lovers, broke up, and are now on the same European food and wine tour. And it was just really, really endearing. Because I've already spoken about this book so much, I'll kind of leave it there. But when this video goes up, the pairing should be coming out on Tuesday, the 6th of August. So if you're interested in a contemporary rom-com summer setting with fun banter, really intense attraction between our two characters, I would absolutely recommend The Pairing by Casey McQuiston to you. I gave this book 5 stars, and I think it is going to be one of the best books that I read throughout the entire year. I loved it. The next book that I read in July is Swift and Saddled by Lyla Sage. In a previous video, I think I pronounced their name Layla, but I'm pretty sure it's Lyla Sage. But this is the sequel to Done and Dusted, which was the first book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. And these are the first cowboy romances I have ever read. And I've absolutely fallen in love with this little subgenre, at least this setting specifically. I adore the scenery of Rebel Blue Ranch. I adore the characters, the family, and I just want all of them to be happy on their path to love, especially our characters in this book, Swift and Saddled. We have a female main character who has been hurt in the past, who is a little jaded and doesn't trust very easily, and we have the middle sibling, Wes. And the way that Wes spoke to Ada and was so willing to let her come to her own decisions. He didn't pressure her in any way, and he gave her little lessons, which I found just so endearing. I loved Ada and Wes, and I'm so excited for the 3rd book in this series, which I think is coming out this fall. I found it to be a really cozy, comforting, quick-paced, fast-paced romance read. I gave it 4.5 stars. It absolutely delighted me, and I would recommend checking out the Rebel Blue Ranch series if you're looking for either a romance series or more specifically a cowboy romance series. The next book that I read in July is Witch King by Martha Wells, and unfortunately, this book didn't work quite as well for me. I think maybe a component to that is that I was more in the mood for those light-hearted, quick-paced romance books, and Witch King is much more slower-paced. It is high fantasy. You are thrown into this world. Wells doesn't feed you any clues. You really have to find your own feet and find your own way. And usually I am okay with that. And usually I really enjoy and appreciate that. But with Witch King, all of this is taking place in a dual timeline setting. There are constant flashbacks to earlier in our characters' lives, and that is what really didn't work well for me. I wasn't able to connect with any of the characters because it felt as if right as when I was starting to care about them, care about their needs and wants and fears and hopes, suddenly we were thrown back in time and I was meeting a different version of these characters. And then I would start to care about those earlier versions of the characters and their needs and wants and hopes and fears, and we'd be flung into the present day timeline. And that just didn't really work well for me. Dual or split timelines or time travel is something that often doesn't work for me personally, which is just such a shame because I was so excited to read Witch King and see how Wells played within a fantasy setting, which includes demons And will say that I did like this world once I kind of got a feel for it, which did take me, I'm gonna say, like, until about halfway through the book, I finally understood what was really happening. But I really just didn't connect with any of the characters. And I'm the type of reader that I really need to connect and care for our characters to really enjoy a book. It's very rare where just setting and just plot can keep me enthralled. So unfortunately, I'd say this is like a good book. And if you are someone who enjoys, not time travel, but if you don't mind dual timelines or split timelines, and you're looking for a high epic fantasy book to read, you might really get on with this. I gave Witch King 3.5 stars, I believe. Again, I didn't outright hate it. I didn't dislike it. I can see that it is a good piece of fiction, and I really enjoyed the end point of the story that we got to. I enjoyed the destination, but I wouldn't say that I really enjoyed the journey. So 3.5 stars out of 5. I'll keep it around on my shelf for a little bit, but I'm not sure if I can see myself coming back and rereading Witch King. But we'll see if it's one of those books that sticks with me and just grows and the characters stay within my mind and compel me. The next thing that I read is not a novel, but is a comic book, and that is Revival Volume 1, You're Among Friends by Tim Seeley with illustrations by Mike Norton. There are 8 volumes within this series, and I've only read the first volume so far, but it is a really, really compelling concept. It takes place within this small town in rural Wisconsin where just within the town limits, people are coming back from the dead. These people have been mourned, but they are coming back from the dead with superhuman strength. Some of them have been committing some acts of violence. Others are exhibiting seemingly no different behavior, but it is this strange phenomenon. The CDC has been called in, the entire town has been put into quarantine, and we are following Dana, who is a member of the police force in this small little town. Her dad is the police chief, and she also has a younger sister, Em, and those are really our 3 main characters. This comic book is only about 150 pages, I think. So I'm still very early days in this story. It's a very compelling concept, like I've already said. I really enjoy the premise, and I'm excited to see how things develop and also what is causing these people to come back from the dead. I will say that the illustrations are stunning. Mike Norton has done an incredible job. However, the male gaze is a little bit heavy for my liking. This is just an example of an illustration here at the beginning. But that is my one critique, I would say, about this comic book so far. The male gaze feels very, very heavy and just a little meh. So I love the concept. I'm intrigued to see how that gaze shifts over the course of a few more volumes. But yeah, there's these creepy spirits wandering about in the woods near her home. It is a horror sci-fi concept, a rural noir, which you might imagine from the zombie-like concept of the book. But yes, I enjoyed this. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. The illustrations are really great. The storyline is very intriguing. And yes, I enjoyed this. I didn't absolutely fall in love with the concept, but I definitely am eager to know more about what's going to happen next. Since I don't usually read horror, and because I read the first volume of Revival late one night in bed, I absolutely needed a palate cleanser next. So I picked up Daring and the Duke by Sarah MacLean. This is one of the very few MacLean books that I haven't read yet, and it is the 3rd book in the Bare Knuckle Bastards series. It's one that I haven't felt compelled to pick up because MacLean has a tendency in the third or final book of her series to have an antagonist redemption arc, and I had very strong feelings against the antagonist of the Bare Knuckle Bastards series. So I was very hesitant for his redemption arc. I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy it, and I wouldn't say that I loved his redemption arc, but I also wouldn't say that I hated it. MacLean expanded the timeline in this book compared to her other books, so it takes place over a much longer span of time, which felt necessary for our villainous main character to really make those changes of his person and make apologies and make amends that were needed for his previous actions. So Daring and the Duke was a really nice way to wrap up the Bare Knuckle Bastards trilogy. It's by no means my favorite in the series. I would say Brazen and the Beast. Brazen and the Beast. That's probably my favorite book within the trilogy, but I'm still happy that I returned to the series, that I returned to these characters. I think I gave it 3 stars because I didn't love our main couple, but I didn't hate them either. And I am happy that they found their happy ever after together. So I gave this book 3 stars, and I am really happy to have returned to this series and finished it, even though this now means I'm pretty sure I've read everything that MacLean has written within that Regency England period. So I've now completed Tessa Dare's bibliography and Sarah MacLean's bibliography. So I'm looking further afield for more author recommendations for people who write similar to MacLean and Dare. If you know of any authors, please let me know down below, because there is a certain itch that Regency romance scratches for me that nothing else has been able to do over the last year and a bit. Finally, the last book that I read in July was Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. This is the first book by Bailey that I have read, and I've heard such mixed things about their writing online. There are people who absolutely adore Bailey's books, and then people who think it is too trite, too stereotypical, and just not good writing. But personally, I love a stereotypical romance. That is what keeps me coming back to romance books. I love that steady cadence of the plot. However, this is the first synopsis of a Bailey book that I've read that really drew me in and that I immediately wanted to read. We follow a golfer, Wells, who used to be the absolute best, but has really been floundering on the green as of late, and his career has gone really downhill. The only person still cheering him on is Josephine, his #1 fan, and Josephine refuses to give up on Wells. She thinks he can make his comeback. And she ends up caddying for Wells, and then a romance blossoms between the two of them. Fangirl Down was so over the top, it was so dramatic, it was far-fetched, and I loved it. I didn't go into Fangirl Down expecting anything different, so what Bailey delivered on, she delivered on incredibly, incredibly well. I gave this book 4 stars. If you like the sunshine, grumpy trope, Wells is so grumpy towards everyone, including but not always Josephine, and Josephine is really optimistic and positive, and she brings out the best of Wells, while Wells also brings out the strongest components of Josephine, or at least he reminds her of the strength that she knows is within herself. Josephine has type 1 diabetes, which is kind of a part of the plot, and I really like when romance authors, as you might be able to tell by how I spoke about McKinlay earlier, I love when romance authors select 1 or 2 larger issues and incorporate them into the plot. So even though this was a lighthearted romance, Bailey was also speaking to the healthcare system and to people who have to choose between healthcare and paying rent, and how that can be incredibly anxiety inducing and really impact your day-to-day life. So yes, I really enjoyed Fangirl Down. However, like I've already said, it's not quite the end of July just yet. So I figured I would talk a little bit about the book that I am currently reading, which is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I am 38% of the way through, so I imagine I'm going to finish this book before the end of July. I have not read One Last Stop yet because One Last Stop does include time travel. And as I've already spoken about in this video, time travel is not something that I usually enjoy. However, neither is second chance romance, and that was the main trope in the pairing, and McQuiston made me absolutely fall in love with her characters. And after reading the pairing, I just wanted more from McQuiston, so I put a hold through Libby on One Last Stop, and yes, I'm 38% of the way through. I definitely am not loving One Last Stop as much as I loved the pairing or Red, White, and Royal Blue, because there is that not quite time travel component, but split timelines component, in the sense that one of our characters is from the 70s and one of our characters is from the present day. So I haven't completely gotten over my ambivalence towards time travel in books, but I am enjoying reading more from McQuiston, and I am enjoying our characters so far. So I'm excited to see where McQuiston takes this book, because I'm not even halfway through, but I am enjoying it, and I think it's going to be a good, fun read, especially if the first third or so is anything to go by. I also have 3 other books out on Libby, and those are going to be read sooner rather than later. So I figured I'd talk about those books just briefly in the August TBR part of this video. So very quickly, the books that I have out on Libby is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas, which is the next book in the Throne of Glass series. And I am looking forward to reading this book. Like I kind of hinted at earlier, this isn't a series I've fallen head over heels in love with. I don't think I really love any of our characters, but I am excited to read the next book in the series just to see where things go, because this is such a beloved series, such beloved books. I feel like I'm missing out on something if I'm not reading them. So I wanted to give them a go, give them a try, and formulate my own thoughts instead of just hearing other people's thoughts online. I also have out For Butter or Worse by Erin Rosa, and I fully only got this book out because I'm really interested in the second book in this series. And while with romance series, you can really pick up the books at any point in time, if you plan on reading all of the books in the series, it's always better to read them in chronological order. So I did get out For Better or Worse, which follows a chef, Nina, and her co-host on a reality TV cooking competition, The Next Cooking Champ, who is apparently a restaurateur and a jerk, Leo. So he kind of pushes her buttons, and it results in Nina quitting on live TV. And then there's the rumor mill gets going, and they think there's a secret romance between Nina and Leo, so they have to play along. So we have the fake dating romance trope in For Butter or Worse, as well as, I'm assuming, enemies to lovers, which are 2 tropes that I really enjoy. So I am really looking forward to this book, even though reality TV competition settings isn't something that usually garners my interest. I'm hoping that the enemies to lovers, the banter, and the fake dating will really pull me in with some good tension and some good banter. I've not read anything by Erin Rosa before, so fingers crossed I really like her writing and that I can then go on to the second book in this series. Then the last book that I have out on Libby right now is Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. And this I totally put a hold on after I read Half a Soul, just because I found it such a whimsical, fun setting. And I have really been enjoying my demon books lately. So Small Miracles, I'm pretty sure it's still YA, and it's quite a small, quick, fast-paced read. But apparently Olivia Atwater mixes angels, demons, romance, and chocolate into a perfectly petty and wickedly entertaining novel. A little bit of sin is good for the soul. So this just sounded like a great palate cleanser book that's hopefully going to be quite humorous. The tag on the front here says, "Bad angels, good intentions." So I'm really looking forward to reading this one, and hopefully I love it as much as I loved Half a Soul. The remaining books on my August TBR are actually books that I had really hoped I would get to in July, but unfortunately, just with the number of hours I've been working recently, I have not had as much time to read as I would like. But the first book on the stack of books I have in my lap here is Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. This is a cozy fantasy romance steeped with love, and it takes place in a little tea shop. The tagline on the back here says, "Run away with me," the mage had said, her eyes alight. "You like tea, I like books. Let's open a shop somewhere remote and forget the world exists." So this, I think, is going to be the perfect escapism read for me when things get even more hectic than they currently are in August, between two women and a cozy tale of mishaps, mysteries, and a murderous queen throwing the realm's biggest temper tantrum, while these two women open up a book/tea shop, and I'm really looking forward to it. I did get the copy that has the sprayed edges. I picked it up not so long ago, so it's still a recent addition to my collection. And I'm hoping that it scratches that cozy fantasy itch, which some books have left me feeling lacking. But we'll see, and hopefully I'll be able to deliver my thoughts on this book at the end of August. One of my reading goals for 2024 is to read 12 nonfiction books over the course of the year. I've currently read 5, so I'm a little behind. So hopefully in August, I'll read more than one nonfiction book to catch up. But at the very least, I'd really like to read Prisoners of Geography, 10 Maps That Explain Everything About the World by Tim Marshall. I've had this book for at least a year or two now, and the book is split into sections. Marshall selects a part of the world and then goes into explain the boundaries that appear on maps and how those came to be and how those affect current affairs and current trade routes and all the likes of that. So my grandmother actually read this book and she found it incredibly informative. So I'm hoping that I really enjoy it as much as I know that she did. So this is on my August TBR, and hopefully I will read it sooner rather than later. Another reading goal that I've already spoken about on this channel is that I want 2024 to be my year of K. I had hoped in July that I would read Lord of Emperors. Unfortunately, I did not, so this is now going into my August TBR. This is the second book in the Sarantine Mosaic, which is an alternative Byzantine Empire-inspired world, and we follow a mosaicist, as you might imagine, with the name of the duology being the Sarantine Mosaic. It's been a few months now since I read the first book in this series, and the thing with Kay's book is I find him to be more slower paced, more character driven. So I really like to take my time with his books. I find his books take me a little bit longer to read, but I also know that I'm going to enjoy them when I dive in. So I haven't wanted to start this book in the evenings when I come home from work and I'm absolutely exhausted, but I do have a 3-day weekend coming up soon and maybe I will finally begin Lord of Emperors. I think I'm hitting the point where I'm realizing I'm not going to be able to finish all of Kay's bibliography in 2024. That might have been a little bit of a lofty goal, but we'll see how far I can make my way through it before the end of the year, and hopefully I'll be able to read Lord of Emperors in August. Another book that I am hoping to read in August is a reread, and that is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I am hoping to reread all 4 first books in the Stormlight Archive series before Wind and Truth comes out in November. Again, I know that is a lofty goal when I'll be working 60 hours a week, but we'll see how I get on. I really do want to reread this series before I begin the 5th book, because it has been a few years since I read the books. I did a reread in the lead up to Rhythm of War's release, and I found it really aided my enjoyment of the series because they're such chunky books, and I have a little bit of a goldfish brain, so it's really nice to have those reminders. And because this is my MMP copy of The Way of Kings, and I have since added the hardback edition of The Way of Kings into my collection, I'm thinking that I'm gonna try and annotate The Way of Kings, which will take me longer to read, I am aware, but that is my goal, my hope at least. I'm hoping that I'll be able to reread The Way of Kings in August and also add some annotations in, because I think that would just be a fun new way to read this book when I think I've read The Way of Kings now 4 times already, or this will be my 4th read, something around there. So I'd like to just change it up and challenge myself a little bit more. Then finally, the last works of fiction that I would like to read during August is going to be Revival Volumes 1 through 5. So I have here Volume 2, Live Like You Mean It, Volume 3, A Far Away Place, Volume 4, Escape to Wisconsin, and Volume 5, Gathering of Waters. So like I said, the illustrations by Mike Norton throughout this series are just so stunning, so incredible. I don't love how heavy the focus is on female chests and the like of that. That's what I meant when I said the male gaze is a little bit heavy or too heavy for my liking. But I mean, this cover specifically, I'm not a big horror fan, but there is just something riveting about this cover that I find myself, I keep staring at it. There's also this very creepy corpse in the water back here. But yes, so these are the volumes 2 to 5. There are 8 volumes in the series. I've only read the first volume, but I'm hoping to read these next 4 volumes, and then I will pick up volumes 5 through 8. So we'll see how I get on with the rest of the series. I've already said this, but I am really intrigued. I am really interested. There are some spirits lingering in the forest around Dana's home. So I know that those are going to be a massive component in the later volumes. So I'm excited, or maybe excited is not the right term. I'm eager to see how those become more relevant and how they're going to change things. So those are the books that I either read throughout July, am currently reading, or am hoping to read throughout August. If there are any books that I've mentioned today that you have read, please let me know because I'd love to chat with you about them. But for now, that is it for me. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll be back soon with a new one. Bye for now.